Today, we're talking about Anthony Hopkins, the man who terrified us as Hannibal Lecter and moved us to tears in The Father. At 87 years old, his story isn't just about winning Oscars. It's about survival, loss, and finding peace after walking through hell. By the end of this video, you'll see him in a completely different light. So if his performances ever touched your heart, hit that like button right now as a tribute to this incredible man. Let me take you back to where it all began. December 31st, 1937. A small town in Wales called Margam. Anthony Hopkins was born into a simple working-class family. His dad, Richard, was a baker who worked long, exhausting hours covered in flour dust. His mom, Muriel, kept the household running. From the outside, everything looked normal. But inside young Anthony's world, a storm was brewing that nobody could see. School was torture for him. He struggled to read. Letters on the page wouldn't stay still. They moved around like shadows, confusing him, making him feel stupid. His teachers called him slow. Other kids treated him like he was different, like he didn't belong. So Anthony did what any lonely kid would do. He pulled away from everyone. He lived inside his own head, surrounded by silence so thick it felt like drowning. Years later, Hopkins would remember those days with brutal honesty. He said he was hopeless at school. He had no friends. He felt invisible, like nobody wanted him around. That kind of pain, that deep feeling of being unwanted, it cuts deeper than any punishment a teacher could give. It leaves scars that never fully heal. But here's where something beautiful happened. When you have nobody to talk to, you find other ways to express yourself. At 12 years old, Anthony discovered the piano. Those black and white keys became his best friends. The melodies he played were the only voices that spoke back to him. He also started painting, pouring all his loneliness and confusion onto canvases with colors nobody else could imagine. Art wasn't just a hobby for him. It was a lifeline. It was proof that something inside him mattered, that he was worth something. Then at 14, everything changed. He met Richard Burton, another actor from the same Welsh town who had already become famous. Burton wasn't a relative, but seeing him succeed meant everything to young Anthony. If Burton could escape this small town and conquer the world, maybe he could too. That moment planted a seed, a tiny spark of hope in the darkness. It showed him that even a lonely, rejected kid from Wales could one day stand in the spotlight. Those early wounds never really healed. But here's the thing. They became the foundation of his genius. All that pain, all that silence, all those years of feeling invisible shaped the actor we know today. His performances have such depth because he knows what it feels like to hurt in ways most people never talk about. After finishing drama school and serving in the British Army, Hopkins entered the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London. This was where the invisible boy started becoming a force to be reckoned with. But the journey wasn't easy. Every lesson felt like a battle. Every rehearsal felt like he was being judged. The self-doubt from his school years followed him like a shadow that wouldn't leave. He joined the National Theatre under the legendary Laurence Olivier. Imagine the pressure. Being surrounded by the greatest actors in Britain, constantly feeling like you don't belong. Like any minute they'll figure out you're a fraud. Hopkins felt that way every single day. Each night on stage demanded perfection. Each role was a test. And when the applause faded and the theater emptied, he was left alone with his thoughts in dim dressing rooms, still feeling like that lonely kid from Wales. That's when alcohol entered his life. At first, it was just a drink to calm his nerves before a performance. Just something to quiet the voices in his head that kept telling him he wasn't good enough. But slowly, quietly, alcohol became more than a friend. It became a trap. Then came his big break. When Olivier got sick, Hopkins was called to replace him in Dance of Death. This could have destroyed him. Most actors would have crumbled under that pressure. But Hopkins didn't. He exploded onto that stage with such power, such raw emotion, that audiences sat frozen in their seats. Word spread through the theater world like wildfire. A new giant had arrived. This wasn't luck. This was years of lonely practice paying off. While other people were out socializing, Hopkins was drilling every line, every gesture, every breath until they became part of him. He earned that moment with every lonely hour of preparation. Soon, Hollywood came calling. In 1968, he played Richard the Lionheart in The Lion in Winter. His performance told the world that his talent couldn't be contained on stage alone. He belonged on the big screen too. But here's what most people don't know. Even as the world started celebrating him, inside he was still restless, still searching for approval he never got as a child, still carrying a hunger that no amount of applause could satisfy. Then came the role. That changed everything. Hannibal Lecter, in The Silence of the Lambs. Hopkins was only on screen for less than 20 minutes. But in those minutes, he created one of the most terrifying characters in film history. Calm, intelligent, and absolutely chilling. He won the Academy Award and shot to the very top of Hollywood. The flashbulbs exploded. The standing ovations went on forever. The world called him a genius. But success came with a brutal price. Endless hours on set. Days bleeding into nights. His body pushed to complete exhaustion. Meals skipped. Sleep sacrificed. Fame demanded everything from him. And when the cameras finally stopped rolling, when the photographers left and the crowd disappeared, he went back to an empty room. Back to silence. Hopkins once said something that breaks my heart. He said fame is nothing. Success is nothing. They don't fill you up. Think about that. Here's a man celebrated by millions, and he felt empty inside. The applause never quieted his doubts. The awards never made him feel like he belonged. He was still that lonely outsider from Wales, just wearing a fancier suit. And in those dark, empty moments, the bottle kept calling his name. His talent kept soaring, though. He played servants, madmen, kings, priests, ordinary people crushed by life. His range was incredible. And when most actors his age had faded away, Hopkins came roaring back. At 83 years old, he played a man with dementia in The Father. The performance was devastating. It felt so real, so painfully human, that audiences cried in theaters. He won another Oscar, becoming the oldest actor ever to win Best Actor. That role wasn't just acting. It was a lifetime of pain and survival distilled into art. But behind all this brilliance, behind the standing ovations and the golden statues, Hopkins was fighting a war nobody saw. By the mid-1970s, alcohol had its claws deep in him. Days blurred together. Mornings arrived not with clarity, but with confusion. He couldn't remember entire chunks of time. His health suffered. His energy disappeared. His first marriage fell apart. The bond with his daughter slipped through his fingers like sand. Alcohol wasn't an escape anymore. It was a thief stealing his life piece by piece. Then came one winter night that changed everything. Hopkins woke up behind the wheel of a car with no memory of how he got there. The cold reality hit him like a punch to the gut. He could have lost everything. His career, his family, his life. That was rock bottom. The abyss staring back at him with merciless eyes. In that moment, something inside him spoke. A quiet voice that said, "Stop. Stop before there's nothing left." In December 1975, Anthony Hopkins made the hardest decision of his life. He stopped drinking. He walked into a support meeting, terrified and desperate. From that day forward, he chose sobriety. One day at a time. Every sunrise became another chance to choose life over the bottle. "It's been a miracle," he said later. "I can't believe that one day at a time, I've stayed sober. For almost 50 years now, he's kept that promise to himself. Every single day without alcohol is a victory, Every year is a mountain climbed. But sobriety couldn't fix everything. The distance with his daughter Abigail never healed. She grew up without him there. And that absence left wounds that can't be erased. Hopkins has said openly, "I don't have any contact with her. It's her choice. Life is life." Those words aren't angry. They're just empty. The voice of a man carrying regret he can't undo. Some mistakes can't be fixed. Some damage is permanent. And even 2 Oscars and a knighthood can't bring back the years he missed with his daughter. That's perhaps the cruelest lesson of his life. That you can conquer the world on screen, but still fail at home. Hopkins tried again with marriage. He married Jennifer Linton, and for a while things seemed better. Friends saw him smile more. There was warmth in his house. Jennifer was patient and kind, giving him stability when everything else felt chaotic. For nearly 30 years, she stood by him, but distance has a way of killing even the strongest love. Hopkins' career kept pulling him away. Long shoots, late nights, endless travel. Jennifer became the anchor, but anchors left alone too long eventually corrode. They wanted children, but it never happened. That silence, that empty space where a child should have been, it grew heavier every year. For Jennifer, it was grief without words. For Hopkins, it was another echo of the loneliness that had followed him his whole life. By 2002, after 3 decades together, their marriage ended. Not in anger, just in silence. And sometimes, that's the cruelest ending of all. Then, at 65, Hopkins found Stella Arroyave, a Colombian artist who brought light into his life. Stella didn't come with heavy expectations. She brought joy, laughter, music. Where others had endured his absences, she brought presence. She filled his house with warmth. And for the first time in his life, Hopkins felt like he truly belonged. They've been married for over 20 years now. There are no children, but there's peace, freedom, the simple happiness of morning coffee together, walks in the garden, evenings at the piano where Hopkins plays not for audiences, but for the woman who listens with love. He said that Stella is his source of energy and balance, that with her, life finally makes sense. But fate wasn't done testing him. Fire came for Hopkins not once, but twice. In the early 2000s, his London home burned down. Everything inside turned to ash. Furniture, paintings, books, photographs. A lifetime of memories gone in less than an hour. Then in 2025, fire struck again. His home in Pacific Palisades was completely destroyed by California wildfires. To lose your home once is devastating. To lose it twice feels like the universe is mocking you. Hopkins stood in the ashes both times, watching everything he'd built disappear. But here's what's incredible. He didn't break. He said things can be replaced. Life cannot. That wisdom, that acceptance, it comes from someone who's already survived so much that material loss doesn't destroy him anymore. Then came the losses that hurt even more. His father Richard passed away, and Hopkins called it the worst thing that ever happened to him. Watching his dad's strength fade, sitting by his bedside powerless to stop time. No amount of fame could protect him from that pain. Years later, his mother Muriel followed. With her went the last connection to his childhood. He said returning to her empty house felt like the walls didn't recognize him anymore. Nobody was left to call him son. And now at 87, Hopkins faces the slowest loss of all. His own body. His own mind. He's spoken about memory faltering. Names and faces hovering just out of reach. That fear poured into his role in The Father, where he played a man losing himself to dementia. Audiences wept because it felt unbearably real. And it was. Because Hopkins knows that fear. He lives with it. Age has slowed him down. His heart doesn't beat as strong. His bones ache. Mornings are harder. The mirror doesn't show Hannibal Lecter anymore. It shows a fragile old man confronting his own mortality. But Hopkins hasn't answered with despair. He's chosen peace instead. He paints in his studio. He plays piano in quiet hours. He walks slowly through gardens with Stella at his side. He talks about gratitude. Gratitude for sunrises, for shared meals, for another breath, another day. Today, Hopkins lives quietly in the United States with Stella. After the 2025 fire, they're rebuilding again. His net worth is estimated around $160 million, built from decades of work and smart real estate investments. But he doesn't flaunt his wealth. He treats it as tools for stability, not trophies to show off. Because fire has taught him that even the biggest houses can burn. Even the strongest walls can fall. His health is maintained with discipline. Regular checkups. No sugar. Early sleep. And that vow of sobriety from 1975 still unbroken. Music and painting are his daily therapy. Each brushstroke, each piano note is a conversation with silence. He accepts that his body is aging. His knees ache. His steps are slower. But he meets it with dignity. Life is very short, he often says now. And in that shortness, he's found urgency, a reason to treasure every dawn as a gift. When Hopkins appears in public now, which is rare, he radiates something beyond fame. A majesty born from survival. Silver hair, calm eyes, the presence of someone who's walked through fire and come out the other side. He chooses his roles carefully now, each one meaningful, each one a final offering of his art. Behind the public image is simplicity, a meal with Stella, a garden walk, mornings filled with sunlight instead of flashbulbs. The shadows never fully vanish, the burned homes, the estranged daughter, the silence left by his parents. They remain. But Hopkins doesn't let them consume him anymore. He's turned pain into discipline, loss into resilience, solitude into creation. His legacy is carved in stone. 2 Academy Awards, BAFTAs, Emmys, a knighthood, the oldest man to ever win Best Actor. But beyond the trophies is something harder to measure. The weight of performances that changed people, that haunted them, that comforted them. From his Baker father's flower-stained hands to the piercing eyes of Hannibal Lecter, his journey is a perfect circle. Ordinary labor reborn as extraordinary art. At 87, Anthony Hopkins stands not just as a legend of acting, but as a survivor. A man who turned addiction into sobriety, loss into gratitude, silence into music, fragility into strength. His story proves that even when the curtain falls, another act can begin. That even the loneliest journey can end not in emptiness, but in home. So if Anthony Hopkins has ever moved you, if his characters still live in your mind, do something for me right now. Hit that like button. Leave a comment sharing your favorite Hopkins moment. Subscribe to this channel because we're bringing you more stories of legends who survived against all odds. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that no matter how dark life gets, there's always a chance to find peace. Because Hopkins' story isn't just about fame. It's about proving that even broken people can become whole again. That's his real masterpiece, not the movies. The life he built after everything tried to destroy him. Thank you for watching. And remember, your story isn't over yet either.